that how it works?
Good morning and welcome to February 12th, 2025 County Commission. We'll start the meeting with the pledge. Tara, will you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Hope you had a safe trip in here this morning. Looked like the roads were pretty good. This time we'll start the Board of Equalization and Review. Eddie, Tara, do we have anybody?
I think the fellow from Montgomery is supposed to be.
Next week.
Oh, that's next week.
He'll be here next week.
Okay. And.
All right.
That was easy.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. So at this time, I'll make a motion to go into recess with Board of Equalization Review until 2:19 at 9 a.m.
Second.
Have a motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Mr. Young. What you got? Or, excuse me. Miss Tara, what you got for us? Okay. All right, so we have a refund.
I move that we approve the refund.
Okay, second. Have a motion to second for the refund. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, you want to make a motion?
Yeah. I move that we approve the exonerations as well.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to second for exonerations presented this morning. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, anything, any comment or any divide? Combine? Okay. Better you be.
I'll move that we approve the minutes.
Second. Have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, Ruth, what about
You did not do it.
vouchers and invoices? Do we have anything?
We don't
that-
have any this week.
Well, I asked her to only do those twice a month because I don't want to dig through them every 3 days. Those can stay on our normal schedule, even though the rest of us aren't.
All right. Have any estate settlements?
Sorry, she didn't see any point doing them every.
Do what?
She didn't see any point doing them every meeting.
Yeah.
Right. Man, this is shaping up.
Don't say it.
This is shaping
Anthony's
up.
not here.
All right, Miss Ruth, we get to go through yours now.
So the first one's Anthony and he is he on Zoom?
Don't see his name. I see three icons.
Well, he doesn't have an iPhone.
Okay, well, we can. Just not. on that one.
Yeah, never been presented with his budget.
Here he is, here he is.
Well, we can give him a minute. Let's go ahead and get it.
No, put him on the spot. The Board of Zoning Appeals.
Angela,
So I'm requesting to reappoint Dan Hill and Rick Johnson.
I move that we approve those appointments.
Second.
Here we got a motion to second on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
On both of these boards, Greg, we were careful to compose them of people throughout the county, so.
I noticed that, that's very nice.
Yeah, well, we intentionally did that with just about every board, just some of those boards like NRGRDA, it's harder to find somebody with the expertise to serve on it. And plus those meetings are out of area. Okay, Angela, planning commission,
Planning commission, we have 2 vacancies, we only had an application for 1. And that's only got that application.
it's Ben Morgan, and he's I think he's a resident of Fayetteville, but I know that he owns a construction business and insurance business. I'm gonna move that we appoint Ben to the planning commission.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye,
Aye.
So when we go later, and you can do the rules.
okay.
Okay. The criteria for refunding.
Angela submitted draft criteria for people to qualify for the REAP grant, which will help tear down dilapidated properties. And upon reviewing it, I just have one addition, and that was an income component. I suggest that we add whether if a property owner give 2 points to a property owner that lives on a fixed income, whether they're retired or disabled, or otherwise qualify using the public defender's formula for indigent clients.
What if they don't want to give us that information?
Then they won't get those 2 points.
Okay.
That's the only difference. I mean. But. You know, I feel like this grant money ought to be first available to those who can't afford to tear down their own properties and then. And then consider the other applicants. But the other, I agreed with the other. Criteria you guys came up with. So I'm gonna move that we approve the criteria for the REAP grant.
Commissioner, that's $100 fine.
Maybe 200, couldn't even get a turn off.
Okay,
The fire department out in the hall calling every time I talk.
More concerning, that was basketball. So.
Okay, so I'm gonna move that we approve the criteria as presented with the one addition I mentioned.
I'll second it.
okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye,
Aye.
So I do have a quick question. So the most points will be 10 points.
yes.
So we have, I'll keep a running list of it. Do we have like if you get 8 out of 10, you're qualified, or how do we wanna?
I think you're gonna have to just look at, you're gonna put them in order every applicant cycle. I mean, you're doing it in rounds, right?
Rounds of 10,
So
yeah.
just put them in order
And
and
present
then,
them to you guys. Okay.
Yeah.
Cause when we do the bid opening, I'll have this sheet available, just tell you what they're for.
well, and the ones that qualify based on the vetting, like, you know, once you guys confirm they actually own the property.
Yeah, and that kind of working on that.
Yeah.
And that is not, just because they were given consideration because of the ranking with the point system.
Right, so
It won't
it's,
disqualify anyone.
no, cause I mean, we do have to spend the money, so we can also get more applicants. We only have about 30 applicants right now, so I'm trying to send letters out, trying to find applicants. But I just wanted to make sure if someone asked me, you know.
Let's do regular press releases on that. We need to publicize the criteria.
Oh.
Once we
Yeah,
get this.
now the income, is that something you want me to ask when they apply, or is that something you want?
If you could just let them know that special consideration is given to low income applicants.
Okay.
And they would just have to provide proof that they're on, you know, social security or disability. Or apply through using a formula, public defender's
Yeah,
office.
then I'll-
But you can tell them they don't have to provide that information, that if, that's just if they want to be considered for the extra 2 points. That, you know, in the ranking process.
Thank you.
Hey,
Here, Angela.
Angela,
Oh.
perhaps you can get with Steve. And Steve can do an article for us, like Allison said.
Not a problem. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks Steve too for helping us out. All right,
Are we gonna get into, while we're on this topic, we're gonna get into the issue of an encumbrance as part of the process on the property?
Well, I mean, we apparently need to put encumbrances on these properties, and I think we probably need to write something up
Well,
to.
here's the problem. It's my understanding, Commissioner Fayette, you spoke with Mr. King.
Mhm.
He told you we didn't have to have an encumbrance on the property.
No, he told us that it was strongly recommended that the encumbrance be incurred, but the encumbrance is our decision. He didn't say that it was a,
Who's Mr. King?
He communicated, he is with the state, he's an environmental resource analyst, and he communicated with Ruth at one point, I believe, or Amy. Placing the encumbrances on the property. In his email, I mean, I'm not trying to be rude here, but it doesn't make any sense in the context of what I believe people would be willing to do. I mean, for example, encumbrance might spell out the terms and conditions of a voluntary agreement or cost share. In that case, if the property owner fails to adhere to their side of the bargain, then the encumbrance might turn into a lien. Well, the reality is that we reach a point where there's conflict between us and the property owner. How do we get that lien? I mean, they're not going to agree to give us a lien at that point, and my guess is that most people, if we present this to them as, oh yeah, we'll tear your building down, but we need a lien on your property for the amount of the cost of the demo and disposal, my guess is most people are not going to be willing to do that.
well, in my speaking with Mr. King, we talked about a contract with them. We allow this to happen. They sign an agreement before the money is allocated, then that will allow us to do that. We're not looking to take property. We're not looking to own it. We're just asking for some simple things, such as may not be able to sell the property for within 3-year period. If you do, then an encumbrance of a lien would be implied upon the properties.
And what different, and I'm not trying to be argumentative with you, but what difference does it make if they sell it 6 months after the demo or three years later? I mean, the reality is, if they sell it, they're gonna sell it.
But they would be reimbursing the county for money spent that they profited from within a specific period of time. Now, once that period of time has elapsed, then they are free to do what they wish with the property. However, I do agree with that encumbrance, because why would the county increase the property value only to allow the property owner to sell it for a profit and not be reimbursed? If we have an agreement that they sign before the money is allocated, then the agreement would state that they agree to a lien or to reimburse the county.
Okay,
Just to reimburse the county, then that would give us legal standing.
my point is that they sign something that says, yeah, I agree to a lien. How do I get that lien and get it recorded?
Well, if they agree, with, they would just be fulfilling the contract. It doesn't have to necessarily, a lien is just another avenue of getting that to obtain that funding. It doesn't have to be a lien. I mean, they could just pay it out of the money that they receive, pay it back to the county, and then they are free.
There's 2 ways to get a lien. I sue somebody and get a judgment against them,
Sure.
and then take an abstract of that judgment and record it, or they voluntarily sign a document that gives me a lien. And my point is, if we reach a point in the relationship with the property owner where it becomes antagonistic, the property owner is not going to sign a lien and give us a voluntary lien, which puts us in a position of having to sue people to get a judgment.
But if they voluntarily sign it before the conflict that you spoke of, and the agreement is already in place, they have no option because it's already recorded and it is legal.
But that goes back to my earlier comment. If we start asking property owners to give us a lien on their property, my guess is the number of people willing to participate is going to drop.
Well, technically, we're not asking for a lien. We're just asking them not to sell it for 3 years. And then, but we cannot prevent anyone from selling property. They can sell property if they wish. They just have to pay the fine, basically.
And my recollection also is that at some point, the county commission expressed a view that they did not want to prevent people from being able to.
I was getting ready to say that. I would not want to prevent people. I mean, the whole idea is to clean up the dilapidated properties around the county and develop the county. So if somebody wants to sell a cleaned up property to somebody who's going to build a nice home on it or a nice business on it, then that's what I would want ideally.
And it doesn't have to be a lien, and that doesn't have to be one of the encumbrances. And a number of encumbrances we place is totally up to the commission. It is not up to the state, or the REAP program does not require anything from them. It is basically giving us the power to distribute and to run our county. And that's all he was saying, it just we were gonna run the county and what we thought was more important. So another encumbrance could be you have to keep the site after it's cleaned up, you have to keep it debris free. You have to maintain it in a specific manner that we would request. That could be an encumbrance. Well, how would we?
Looking to drive around the county and make sure that, I mean, that's the other issue is if even something as simple as you need to keep the brush cut and you need to keep the grass cut, is Angela gonna then have to drive around the county and visit every single piece of property to make sure that the grass is cut? And if the grass isn't cut, then what do? Do we send Sonny and his crew to the property to cut the grass and send the property owner a bill? I mean, this email is frustrating because it ignores the practical realities of the situation that we find ourselves in.
I don't want to take guidance from someone at his level. Not to be a snoot about it, but I don't want a low-level worker's interpretation of a federal law guiding us here. I'd like us to get in touch with somebody who is, Ruth, didn't this come up at the auditor's training or something that you attended recently?
Or the lane.
The whole REAP criteria issue.
No, it was in the training that for the REAP grant that Amy and Angela sat through.
And it was
That's why she contacted him. And his response to us in the emails what Anthony's talking about.
And part of the problem is in some instances, he said, oh, an encumbrance is absolutely required, and then in other instances, it's been encumbrances are preferred.
Can you write that office and ask for official guidance on this, and maybe give some examples of the practical considerations that.
I'd be happy to. And I mean, ultimately, whatever the commission decides, I'll certainly do my best to implement it, but I mean, I don't want us to get into a situation where we get through this this grant cycle, and then somebody from the state shows up and says, oh, well, you didn't do this, so.
Yeah, and then we have findings and.
And then we have to pay the money back. I mean, that not only is gonna present a question mark that our ability to get grants in the future. But I'll see what I can find out.
Yeah, he's right. He's right.
Okay, due to time constraints, I would like to move this conversation until our counselor has a chance to write a letter and receive an answer back.
Yeah, I'd say write the general counsel or somebody higher up in the office and ask for guidance. Because it is confusing. So second.
Oh, second. Do we have a motion to second on the floor? All those in favor? Aye.
So we'll just strike this until he gets back to it.
Yes. Okay, so 9:15. Michelle? All right, before you start your budget, then I'm gonna do my normal spiel. That the commission will work to fulfill the basic needs of all office holders. And if at the time, once the budget's complete, we have extra funding, we will move forward with and look at other items that have been requested.
I think I'm pretty easy this time. We want to go ahead and do the elections budget, which is 413, because there's definitely no change from last year. All the numbers seem to be there. Parameters, and I didn't see any reason to change it. So. Any questions on that one? Like I said, it's pretty straightforward and exactly the same as it was. I copied and pasted.
Okay. I have no questions.
All right, so back to 402. Which is the main county clerk budget. It is, I think, again, fairly straightforward. There is a roughly 3% increase, which takes into consideration the proposed increase in PEIA costs, which are significant, as well as a small raise for all of my employees. I again added in my copier because every time he comes and he looks at it and he shakes his head, and he goes, "Well, no more fun parts next time." And in fact, he unsolicited provided that quote, which would give us a free copier, trying to sweeten the deal to get us to go ahead and go for it. So I included that in my budget again this year. Other than that, those numbers are all the same. I did raise the overtime, in the past, that's, I think, been covered under. It's not really been aligned necessarily in my budget, but with with ADP and being more precise on the actual overtime time that people work, there's been a slight increase in that, so I did include that in the budget, so it was there if it's needed. Other than that, people keep buying houses and keep paying a lot of money for them. So we keep collecting excise tax. We're up. Last year was 548,000 of that excise tax. And copies and vital, like copies and birth certificates and death certificates and that kind of stuff. That's up about 10% from 22-23. If you all remember, the 21-22 number was about half that. So that the vast majority of that money is from the excise tax. Transfer stands. The cost of the privilege to transfer real estate from one person to another. Permanent.
Doesn't seem anything out of line here. Michelle, you're pretty thorough with your request.
I'm asking for money, so I feel.
I know, but you give us a lot of paperwork to look through. You realize that, right?
Yeah, try.
Did you try to dazzle us? Is that what you tried to do?
No, I just want you to.
But yet you didn't ask for any more money than what you asked for last year.
Not for the elections. I did a little bit in the before in the main budget, because like I said, as we all know, it's more expensive to live here now, and I feel like, the way inflation works, when we don't give them, and it was really very small, but I felt that the budget could handle that.
Yes. Well, it looks like maybe this slight increase is just the wage, the living, increasing cost of living.
Well, I would be remiss if I didn't ask for that as their boss.
Most of us, you have no option. You have to ask for an increase.
Yeah, the insurance plus. Bless y'all for finding that money for that, because that's a big expense.
I don't see anything out of it. Anything I need to question? You need to question.
Well, we have a little bit of time.
Yeah.
And I've neglected to ask you, and I apologize for that, but during the election, we used those little pads.
Mhm.
How did the pads, with your people, what did they say about them?
They love them at early voting.
I asked them. And they were voting too.
I mean, that is one of those, I did not mention, we created those special funds where a small portion of that transfer stand gets set aside for the county clerk's office. In anticipation of HAVA grant money not always being available, which is what we typically use. Those are still stabilizing, and I won't know exactly how much we're gonna will actually have in those funds for another year or so. Because of the way the legislation was written. And so I'm hesitant to touch it and make a big purchase, and then we find out in a couple of years, we're really not gonna have. It's not gonna be that much money kind of deal. But I would love to get those more e-poll books. I think those they would alleviate some of our issues. What were they? They would alleviate some of our issues in some of our smaller precincts, where we've got teeny tiny precincts like down in Chestnut Knob. It would really be a big help in some of the smaller ones and in the bigger ones to move the line through faster. I don't know if anybody voted at early voting, but it was a way easier process this time than it has been in the past. So.
You wanna give Sarah Tucker an attaboy?
Sure.
Sure, let's give Sarah an attaboy. Thank you, Sarah.
No, Sarah does a great job and in fact, all my staff does. Those elections in particular, the whole staff works on. So it's a big project.
Okay.
We do a lot in my office. So. Any other questions?
I don't have any questions.
No, thank you.
Thanks. We still keep looking for a building. For our election
Oh,
equipment.
now you're gonna bring it up.
We're still looking. The whole mention about how expensive property values have gotten in this area, it kind of feeds into that same.
Yeah, we have that in mind. Ruth and I regularly discuss that, so. We come up with an idea and then it ends up shot down for some reason. But it is in the forefront of our minds.
Okay, Ruth, we have 3 minutes. Can we get through number 5?
No, number 5,
We should be able to get through 5.
It's a new fund for, I'm just gonna say we're gonna postpone that because the guidance that is from the auditor's office is not exactly what I was initially told, but it's fine. We'll look at it later.
Okay.
And then the letter regarding hill subsidence, I made 0 changes to the draft that we got,
Okay, but first, we need to make a motion to postpone.
let's just strike. I think
Yeah,
we can
just strike it,
it.
because I don't think it's gonna be on the
Okay.
agenda.
Number 6, you say it's straight up?
Yep, it's still like it was without changes. This is to try to address the slippage, above some residences in Schmitter Street. I move that we approve the letter.
Okay, I'll second. So we have a motion, a second. On the floor, all those in favor?
Aye.
We're going to send all this with the letter.
Mhm. So they can see the pictures.
Yeah, good.
Michael and Jack did a great job on that.
I think this is somebody's. Might have been.
No, it's part of our packet.
Yeah, I know that. but I have
Yeah,
my
it was
copy
attached
here.
to the packets.
Okay.
Yeah, because it was blue, so I knew it wasn't ours. Yeah.
Want to do celebrate?
Anthony, can you tell us about the Celebrate? So quick.
So I don't remember how much the commission kicked in on Celebrate last year. Celebrate is the software that law enforcement uses to access cellular telephones that have been seized pursuant to a search warrant. These phones and this software have been instrumental for the prosecutor's office in terms of prosecuting drug crimes and sex offense cases. I had a trial back in it was April of last year. And some of the information that we downloaded on Mr. Yarrell's phone was his Cash App transactions, which there was 2 months, I was only allowed to use about a month and 3 weeks. In that time period, he had over $2,000 Cash App transactions that all ended in zeros. No explanation provided. You can type memos in on this, but that same case, we also were able to download location information. And what we found from both of the people that were in the vehicle is basically for the 1 year prior to their arrest, they were traipsing all over the East, well, not all over the East Coast, but basically from Bluefield to Princeton to Beckley to Oak Hill to Charleston to Fairmont, Morgantown, Pittsburgh, and we even had a hit in Detroit where both of them had gone up to Detroit for some reason. There was some interesting party pics from Detroit that were on the phone. I wasn't allowed to use those at trial. The other area where this software is extremely helpful is sex offense cases, because it documents communication between the pedophile and the victim. More importantly, when things are deleted, text messages, pictures, Celebrite has the ability to get into that phone and recover. I mean, and I'm not saying it recovers every single deleted bit of information, but Celebrite has the ability to recover deleted pictures, deleted text messages. One sex offense case, we had the defendant had engaged in some rather disturbing communication with his stepdaughter. Technically, it wasn't his, it was the child's living girlfriend. For some reason, he screenshotted the text communication. And then when law enforcement started asking questions and started pursuing an investigation, he got into his phone, deleted the screenshots he had taken. We ended up seizing his phone, getting a search warrant for it, and were able to recover the screenshots he took of those communications, which were very helpful. I mean, he was saying things to this young lady that no adult male should be saying to a 14-year-old child. Another case, we had an individual who his wife had found nude photographs of him on the victim's phone. When we got hold of his phone and did a search on it, we found the corresponding pictures on his phone. So we could establish that they went from his phone to his step granddaughter's phone. So this, and ultimately, I think that's why he ended up pleading guilty. So the problem with Celebrite is they are, for the most part, the only game in town. And every year they have been raising their subscription fee. I'm hoping as we move forward, other companies will develop software and they will give Celebrite some competition. But as time goes on, one of the problems we're dealing with is as cell phone manufacturers improve their security technology, Celebrite has to keep up. And the reality is we don't get into every single phone we can get into most of them, but not all of them. The cost this year is $35,000 total. At this point, to give you some numbers, 162 phones were seized and were run through the Celebrate program. This was for the calendar year 2024. The sheriff's department had the overwhelming, well, I should say overwhelming, the sheriff's department had the majority of those phones. 50 of the 162, which comes out to about 31%. Oak Hill provides the employee to use the Celebrate software. Oak Hill provides the equipment necessary to extract the data from the cell phones and store the data. Oak Hill's employee is paid to do that. So Oak Hill was hoping the Fayette County Commission would pick up the lion's share of the cost of the Celebrate software. Nicholas County Commission has agreed to contribute $3,000. At this point, I have no other commitments from any other agencies or government bodies to kick in. So the request is that the county commission $32,000 to make up the difference. In speaking with Chris Young, he's advised that the state police will not kick in on it because they have what they call, I believe it's, I forget the name of it, but they have a place in Huntington that they use. And in case you're wondering, well, why don't we just use them? The reality is that everybody in the state uses that state police electronics lab. So you essentially have to wait a really long time to get information back from them. At this point, like I said, at this point, the only commitment that we have is from the Nicholas County Commission to kick in $3,000. So my request is that the county commission make up the difference. I don't know if the task force would be willing to provide any funding for this or not. But at this point, like I said, the only other entity that's offered to contribute has been the Nicholas County Commission.
Who all uses it?
The overwhelming majority of the usage is the Oak Hill Police Department and the Fayette County Sheriff's Department. Oak Hill PD, 42 of the 162 phones, the Fayette County Sheriff's Department, 50 of the 162 phones. Up next is the task force with 23 of the 162 phones. So it's primarily the Sheriff's Department and the Oak Hill Police Department. Those are the two agencies that use Celebrate the most, and they account for over half of the usage.
Does Nicholas County participate?
In the task force?
In the task force.
They do, they are part of the, actually, Nicholas County at the present time is not part of the task force. They have no member of the Sheriff's Department on the task force. Summersville PD has a member.
Okay, so that's what I'm thinking about.
In fairness to the Nicholas County Sheriff's Department, it's my understanding they don't have the manpower. They are shorthanded and they don't have the manpower to spare to send a deputy to work with the task force. So it's not that they don't want to participate. I think they're in a position where they don't really have an option of giving up one of their deputies for the task force. So at this point, it's limited to Summersville in terms of Nicholas County law enforcement, Summersville Police Department. They use Celebrate according to the statistics I've been given. 8 of the 162 phones were from the Summersville Police Department.
Any other counties or any other outside agencies involved?
The only other entity that I haven't already covered are the 2 other entities, Beckley PD and the Raleigh County Sheriff's Department have asked for assistance, but we're talking 1 phone from the Raleigh County Sheriff's Department, 2 from the Beckley Police Department. So it's overwhelmingly Fayette County and Nicholas County law enforcement agencies.
When does your current subscription run
Oh, you're asking me difficult questions. March 28th.
So
So we have some time to see if we can, I think the only other viable I think the only other viable agency that might be willing to contribute to this would be the task force, but if memory serves, 2 years ago, the task force foot the bill for the whole thing,
I'm thinking that they did too.
courtesy of Heather Hewitt.
So. If this is the sheriff's tool, why are you presenting the request?
Because I volunteered to do it and because it's important to our office.
Okay, I feel like since it's an annual thing, it needs to be in somebody's budget.
I don't disagree, and quite frankly, the notion of every year basically passing the hat, as it were, makes me a little uncomfortable, makes me a little nervous, because we're at the point where law enforcement and prosecutors are relying on this information, and without having access to Celebrate, our ability to investigate and prosecute crimes is going to be curtailed. I mean, the degree to which drug dealers are using cell phones is mind-boggling. Because they're basically creating a written record of their transaction. And when we get into their phone through Facebook Messenger, text messaging, Cash App transactions, it's a veritable gold mine of information to establish drug trafficking behavior. And it's, I've kind of joked about the younger people. It's like, us old people don't text. We pick up the phone and call. But by sending text messages, sending Facebook messages, sending Snapchat messages, and Snapchat messages in some instances can be recovered. Snapchat's big attraction is when you send the message, it's good. You can see it for a short period of time and then it automatically deletes itself. But the use of cell phones in drug trafficking it's significant. And it's interesting that nobody out there seems to recognize, nobody out there involved in this activity seems to recognize that you're creating a written record of your activity.
I agree with Ms. Taylor. I think that this should be in a budget somewhere that you don't have to come year to year to year to see that, do we have this tool or do we not have this tool?
So the only potential problem I see with that is if we're going to, and I think Oak Hill's contribution is significant in terms of they train the employee is paid by the Oak Hill municipality to do the work they do with Celebrate, and they provide the facilities for the data extraction and the storage. So they're invested in this financially by supporting the employee and by providing the facilities.
Let me just comment on that. I mean, I realize that that's how it's been, at least since I've been back home, like over 10 years, but it just doesn't make sense to me from a practical perspective, why we are using a municipal police department to exploit data with our database.
Cost sharing. I mean, basically, the reason the system has evolved was it doesn't necessarily make sense to have a Celebrate trained individual working for every law enforcement agency.
But there's probably no MOU in place, is there?
I don't believe there is.
I mean, I know that's how it's always been done. I mean, I know who it is. I know he does good work. I've never
Actually, Mason retired.
Did he? Oh, who's doing it now?
His first name is Tyler and his last name escapes me. He
The
just,
guy who worked for this town before?
I believe so. Yeah, he just
County.
he just started toward the end of last year.
We are talking about a forensic officer, correct?
Yes, sir. He handles their crime scene investigation, and he is one of the evidence custodians. And in addition to those responsibilities, he's their Celebrate technician.
I don't know why we wouldn't cross-train somebody.
Well, we have a forensic officer too.
I know.
The sheriff's department does. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with Ms. Taylor or agreeing either. I think it's something we can explore if we make this a permanent thing, that we have more control of how it is implemented and who we go through, like you said.
We have time, so if the county commission wants to explore other options, we don't have to make a decision today.
I think an MOU would be a good idea. I mean, even though it's been done and it's worked, I mean, we could just put the terms of how it's always worked in the MOU, but I'd like to have something formal. I mean, if we're providing the technology and we have an expectation, an employee of another department is prioritizing Fayette County cases. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't,
I
I
mean,
don't,
just, and I don't think it should be personality dependent. I think it should be dependent on, you know, I think the structure should be in place and whoever's in the role should understand what the agreement is.
even though you probably had no problems in the past, they probably worked with you, you know, well.
No,
But I agree with Mr. Taylor. I think there should be an MOU, and we would have that in writing of how this all works. Which you probably have already worked it out.
Well, I mean, there's a process in terms of how it's handled, but it's not been reduced to writing.
Would there be any objection to that?
I mean, Commissioner, I'll do whatever the commission asks of me, and there's no reason not to have an MOU.
Good deal.
Of course, my guess is that some of the agencies, I mean, I don't necessarily think we have to get every single agency that's used
no, I mean,
Celebrate, but the people, the agencies that use it primarily, as I said, are the Sheriff's Department, Oak Hill PD, the task force, and the state police.
the majority of the task force cases are here in Fayette County, so I don't have a concern about that. It's more about between us and the person doing the work, the department that controls the person doing the work. I don't want him to be prohibited in any way or to put something of ours, be forced to put something of ours to the side. You know what I mean? I'd just like to have that formalized between, because that's where the bulk of the collaboration is happening. The task force, by virtue of having Fayette County deputies on it, is already represented in my mind at something like that.
Well, I've never had, I will say this, I've never had a problem with Mason in terms of timeliness. He's usually waiting on us, not the other way around. And the interesting thing about Celebrate is, as I understand how it works, if the phone is password protected, essentially Celebrate just begins trying every conceivable combination of letters, numbers, and characters. And Mason told me that sometimes he'll hook a phone up and won't be able to get into it for 2 or 3 months. And then all of a sudden he'll come in one day and Celebrate's figured out the password. But like I said, generally speaking, he's waiting. Well, it's not Mason, it's Tyler now. Generally, they're waiting on us, not us waiting on him. But I can certainly take care of that.
Okay, so at this time, I'd like to make a motion to postpone this until March the 12th, pending the MOU. Make a decision that time.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion second on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Anthony.
Certainly, thank you.
Okay,
Anthony, can you and the sheriff work out getting that incorporated into somebody's budget? It's neither of you presented yet this year.
How convenient.
I know. Can be updated.
I will, I'll get with Jess and see what we can get worked out.
Oh, he's presenting today.
okay. At this time, we're going to go into just talking about Canal Falls PSD. With us today, we have Carl Harris from the PSD and Joey. Not present are Dan and Jonathan, unless they're on Zoom. Also have Jack Ramsey from their engineering department and their counsel, Todd Swanson. So welcome to you folks. Is Joey is Jonathan or Dan on?
Where are their levels?
Hill and Jonathan Gross. I don't see either of them unless they're one of the, but they both do have iPhones.
I think Dan's in the bid meeting.
Oh, Dan's got a bid today.
If somebody could get out, I'm not really sure. That's what he's got going on.
Okay, and what about Jonathan?
Prior, okay, that's my understanding.
It doesn't. Okay. We have no way to tell.
All right,
Don
so
has one of the iPhones.
this is, I want to go to October. In October, there was a PSC hearing. And I had asked that they postpone the hearing for 60 days for us to gather information. At that time, Mr. Swanson was there and he asked that they just, let's just take care of all of it and be done with it. Because we didn't get the information we needed, we asked for another extension, and that's why we're actually gathering a lot of information on the PSDs in that market. We also have a public information meeting scheduled on March. Let me get my calendar up here a second. I'm sorry. On March the 6th at 6 o'clock at Gully Bridge Town Hall. And at that time, we want the public to come and talk to us. We're going to talk to them about everything that we've discovered doing this stuff. And it's not it's not that we're making a decision. We're just wanting to know what the heck's going on. We've been working on this for, gosh, I'm trying to think. Todd, you've been on this, you've been the representative for the case for 4 years?
Yeah, so since, I think, December of 2020.
Yeah. And then before that, we had another attorney that was there. And I want to start off with this. When I first went to this PSD meetings, we had a manager who was taking bottles of water and send them in to have testing done. And Leslie and I, we do this little sign because, he was doing some things that shouldn't have been done. Fortunately, the entire board left and I was able to talk to 3 individuals to go onto the board. And everyone laughed at me when I said, yeah, I've got a banker, a businessman and an attorney as board members with PSD. Everybody laughed at me. But those guys went in and turned some things around that I didn't think was possible. But they did it. The PSD was severely in the red and they tightened up their belts. They had extra meetings to get some things done. And they really put the customers of the PSD up front. Now, that leads to this. We've had a horrendous storm that wiped out wastewater lines coming from the prison down Hamilton Hollow. The hands have been tied because of FEMA and some other things going on. And then there's been people making comments in newspapers that should have been run through people before they were made, because it's really damaged a lot of things going on with the PSD, with the customers of the PSD, and it's put things in a bad perspective. So that's some reasoning why we're having these meetings, so that we can try to figure out what all's going on, what's going to be a best case scenario. And we want to inform the public, and that's why we're having our public meetings in each area. Have something to add?
Yeah, so basically, West Virginia American Water came to us on January 22nd. I think I told Carl about it because he was up here that day. But they came with a proposal for them to take over the sewer system and several of our PSDs, including yours, and the water system in yours. And we met in executive session because it was contract related. But after that executive session, we asked our council to reach out to West Virginia American Water and request that they allow us to release the information they provided us to the PSD boards and their councils so they could review it. The way our council explained it to us, we basically had three options in a case like this. One is a PSD could voluntarily say, yes, we want to be taken over, or we want this part of our organization to be taken over by West Virginia American Water. Or the PSC could, make that decision after battling it out in multiple administrative hearings, or what West Virginia American Water was asking the county commission to do, and we had called the nuclear option, which is the county commission vote in favor of it, and that would preclude any further action. So that's what they had asked us to do, and we didn't want to even consider something like that without talking to each of our PSD boards involved. Kanawha Falls has, of course, been more active than the others as far as letting us know where it stands on things like this. And we know that the system is set up for PSDs to fail. We know that anytime there's a distressed utility, and it's always, of course, it's filed by the people wanting to take you over, that halts all of your funding, that you have no way to use your grants. We've been educated on that. I know Leslie Taylor can tell you how upset I was when I learned that because it just, to me, you are set up for failure from the beginning. Everything is against you. I think there is an attitude at the PSC that West Virginia American Water, I've made comments that, it's almost like they are future employees of West Virginia American Water, some of those people making the decisions down there, because it just seems like everything is in favor of that company, and it doesn't matter what the PSD does or what you say, that it just seems to fall on deaf ears, because it seems like the conclusions are foregone. So what we want to do is, and what we did with Armstrong Creek last week is ask, we're going to take it off of public, go into executive session with the board members and the lawyers, and we're going to do that in here. And
Before you do that, I'd like to say something.
okay, we will, but I just, to discuss kind of more specifically what our concerns are and hear yours. Because, I feel like there's just been this full court press since I've been a commissioner for 4 years to get our PSDs, to acquire our PSDs by West Virginia American Water. And I want to hear your thoughts about it.
You're going to executive session.
You guys will be a part of it.
And
I want to say this. Well, there's news is here. And Commissioner Brennan was right. He was there from the get-go when the three of us were on the board. I've regretted that many times, more in the last couple of years than before, because I feel like, as you said, they set it up to fail. The common parlance for the distressed utility statute is the West Virginia American Water Acquisition Act, which is what it's basically become. When we started out, that system was a disaster, as Commissioner Brenneman noted. There's supposed to be 2 pumps at each station where you have sewer. There was 1 pump. There were supposed to be generators. There weren't generators. We did a project to improve that system, working both at the plant and at those stations to get everything brought in line. Then we had the flood, and that wiped out 2 miles of lines up Campbell Hollow.
My first question a week after that happened was, why am I the only one concerned, and the other two commissioners of the district? Why are we the only ones concerned about getting that fixed quickly? Well, it's government bureaucracy, as you know. We met with FEMA, we had all their people in at least twice at the office. They worked with our people, getting all the information together. We have been meeting monthly with them on Zoom meetings in order to get this project moving down the road. Jack Ramsey with the engineer is been working diligently to get this whole thing done. Jason Means with the state's emergency services has worked really, really hard to get this done so that it will be paid for out of FEMA funds, putting a new line in from the prison on down. That hasn't been made very public. I don't think people up in Hampton Hollow understand what we've been doing to get that done. That's where the sewer is. The water, we got the blame for the prison being without water for a period of time. I don't want to point the finger at anyone else, but the fact is that wasn't our problem. And the Public Service Commission's engineers said that at one of the hearings we had initially. But as soon as that hearing was over, Charlotte Lane came off the bench, talked to Greg Tucker and myself. And she said, you all need to be talking to West Virginia American Water. No assistance on how to help us, but that you need to be talking to West Virginia American Water. I have my own opinion of what that's all about. But the fact is, you got to deal with the Public Service Commission, and they have their knee on our neck right now. And it's hard to get anything accomplished when you can't get the rates you need. Everybody else seems to be able to get what they need. And we'll show you what the rates are for West Virginia American Water compared to ours. We live in an area where people don't have the money to pay these kind of bills. I can pay them without a problem. I have a pretty good retirement. My wife has a pretty good retirement. And thanks to having worked for the county for 20 some years, we're doing okay. But most of the people down where I live aren't. And it's just an absolute disaster to allow them to run over us like that. And to be honest with you, when I first went on the board down there, I had a conversation with one of West Virginia American Water's folks who talked to me then about taking it over. And I was all for it until I went to a couple of board meetings and found out what was involved and what they would do to the people there. I have worked with people of the state of West Virginia for most of my career as a defense lawyer, as a personal lawyer, and as a prosecuting attorney and assistant prosecuting attorney. And now I'm doing this job. And it's a thankless job, but somebody's got to do it. And to let them run over the public service districts the way they do is a crime.
Okay, for the record, I know Commissioner Fournette, he always likes to ask a question. So Greg, you want to ask the question of who has them as a dilapidated or not dilapidated, but distressed utility?
What do I want to ask the question of who has them?
Yeah.
Well, of course, when they say commission, everyone assumes it's the Fayette County Commission. It would be us three, myself, and my other two colleagues here. It is not the commission of the Fayette County Commission. It is the commission of the Water Commission.
Public service. It's what's called the Public Service Commission, which has done anything but represent the public and take care of the public like they're supposed to.
And that's where we have to distinguish. We have to distinguish that it's the decisions does not lie here. We have overreaching or oversight that tells us what we are legally able to do, what you're legally able to do, and what the laws say that they can do. Where our hands are tied pretty much. We're just trying to mitigate the circumstance to the best of our abilities for our people to come out ahead. And I know it's tough, and we applaud your work and your effort. And I went down there, John showed me things that he's done for 2 years. He's been working on this, and where it's come is phenomenal. Where it's come, and probably could go further if you were lended a little assistance. But we are dealt the cards we are dealt, and now we're going to have to deal with it. We got to make a good decision, and your input is important, and the people's input is important, and that's why we're having the county commission or the meetings for the people to say, hey, well, this is what we want.
What is the status of the FEMA aid? Was that put on hold because of this distressed utility issue? Because I know that, you know, we got awarded that within months of the flood. And I know that we have sent, and we plan to do it again. We sent a letter to the governor after the floods asking for an emergency declaration for that area, to try to facilitate the contracting, you know, issues and try to, you know, expedite.
It was not put on hold. It's been an ongoing process. We met monthly by Zoom with everyone that's involved. As a matter of fact, we have 2 meetings, one with just the state folks, and then we have a second meeting with FEMA. And the project is around $20 million. And I think funding has been arranged for all but $1 million of it from our last meeting. Leslie has been instrumental in helping with that, as she is with all the projects for the public service districts. One for her, we'd be up the creek without a paddle. But it has not been stopped. However, they have said that these are grant monies and federal monies, and that if West Virginia American Water takes it over, those won't be available to them. And if if we have spent any of that money before they take it over, then in that event, they have to reimburse the granting agents. As you know, and as I have said publicly many times, it is my opinion that if you keep a board as a paper board, and the only thing they do is acquire low interest loans and grants, and then pass that on to West Virginia American Water, Carl Harris's opinion, and only my opinion, is that's a violation of criminal laws of the state of West Virginia, because it's obtaining money under false pretenses. It is in fact holding it out to be a public entity that is entitled to those grants and entitled to those low interest loans, and then passing that money on to a for-profit organization that makes millions of dollars a year.
I did ask, a roundabout way about that. If the boards would be, in the case of a takeover, if the boards would be kept intact, and the answer was no. I asked if the employees would be kept on board employed, and the answer was yes. And I also asked if the county were to receive whatever the ultimate offer is, if that could be applied to offset any rate hikes to the people there, and they said yes. But, you know, again, I share your, you know,
I don't
angst
think
with the
anybody's
whole,
surprised about how I feel about it, and I suspect that might be the reason they want to keep going.
well, any of the boards is what they said, but, because we were talking about all 3 at the time, but anyway, anything else before we,
I think we just need.
anybody else have anything to say before we go into executive session with the board? I'm going to move that we go into executive session with the board to discuss, under the provision of the exceptions, to discuss contract negotiations.
And Jack Ramsey has all their information. He has plans and stuff. So Steve, Leslie, if you guys wouldn't mind giving us the room, Amy, Amber. Okay, come back to our meeting. We were in executive session and no decisions were made. So we're back on to our regular session now.
Okay, and while we were in executive session, given that we're running late and we have an 11 o'clock meeting about Wolf Creek Park within our GRDA, I asked Ruth to reschedule the sheriff's budget presentation and the 911 cybersecurity grant application. And do you want us to put it on the next meeting, Ruth? The one after that?
At least the sheriff's budget has to be on the next meeting.
Does it?
We have several budgets in the next meeting, so.
We might need to
We
put
can
it
do
after
that.
that.
It'll be fine. It'll be the next meeting.
Are you sure? Well, good, because then we have, I really would rather not have that presentation on the day that we have the PSD in here.
Okay,
I mean, I think we ought to. I don't think we ought to stack that meeting anymore and it's already
so
stacked.
you wanna hear them on the fifth?
Yeah. Does that work?
All the remaining, both we have Anthony, sheriff, assessor. I feel like I'm forgetting somebody.
Assessor will be easy. County clerk,
Tuesday, there's,
I'm not county clerk, circuit clerk.
he's not doing presentation, he already kind of seen.
Yeah,
Okay, so
you know, we just have to remind some of them that they're not in private practice any longer. They don't get paid per word. And, you know, they only have a certain amount of
I
time.
like Jim
to-
Keenan per syllable. I
You mean
think he's
Anthony?
so I'm gonna move that we postpone the sheriff's budget presentation and the 911 center cybersecurity grant application to the March 5th meeting.
I'll second. We have a motion to second on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye. Okay, motion adjourned.
Second.
Oh, yeah.